guys, my name is Jo and I am the founder of NaviStar Legal, and today I have Patrick Andrews with me. Hi Patrick.
Hi Jo.
Patrick is the barefoot lawyer, and today we are going to be talking about a different way of practicing law and a different way of supporting businesses to focus on how contracts can make you feel, how better to bring collaboration in, and particularly about polarity, so two ends of the spectrum. Patrick, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. And I notice your bookshelf behind you, so I'm going to ask you for some book recommendations later. We'll do that later. But first of all, tell us about your career journey and how you started, and what took you off on a different trajectory.
Okay, sure. I suppose, yeah, I think my career, what I laughingly call a career, has had very different phases. So I started off qualified in London as solicitor's firm, late 80s. I didn't get on with law firms, they didn't get on with me really. So I took off, backpacked around the world, came back and ended up going in-house. I was quite intrigued with big business. And so I got a job I speak French, I got a job with the world's biggest air conditioning company. Loved that, I actually loved big business, and liked working in a team. So I really got that, and I found, after a few years of doing that, I really found how law can really contribute. Because that was definitely much, as a law firm, I've always felt quite remote from what was really happening. You'd never see before and after, you just come in, you were very expensive, the clients would use you as little as possible and leave. And I found, and you were sitting in an office, but I found actually working in a company was really fascinating. So I loved that feeling of, and you'd be dealing with real people with real issues, and they'd come into your office and really frowning, and they'd leave and go, yeah, I loved that. And then and I started doing bigger and bigger, and I guess I was reasonably good at it and was doing more international deals, big deals, buying companies for £50 million here and so on internationally. And then I guess there was a shift. And partly that was because I guess I had an experience where someone close to me died years ago. Very young, a young person, aged 30, got cancer out of the blue and died. And that was the real wake up for me. So it really made me think and question life and reflect on life. And I started reading about, and that person had cancer. And so I started inquiring into why does a 30-year-old get cancer? And I started to read a little bit about our industrial food system and so on. Anyway, I found myself working for a huge company, importing timber, biggest importer of timber in the UK. And yet I love trees. And I had this sort of moment where I just thought, why is this a good idea? What's this all about? And I thought, and I know loads about companies, I thought, but I didn't know the one most important thing, what we were doing and why we were doing it. It occurred to me, because my job was to structure companies. So I'd help a Canadian company do a joint venture with a Russian company, or an English company with a Chinese company. And that structure is quite delicate. You get into detailed discussions about who appoints the managing director and how's it run, and maybe one appoints the finance director and one appoints the managing director, and who's actually in charge. And a 50-50 joint venture is very different from a 49-50 one. So what's that all about? And I started to step back and think, well, how's the company I'm working for structured? It isn't like this, it's like this. It's like shareholders at the top, and then a board, and then a CEO, and then a massive hierarchy below. It's really pyramidal. It really dates back to almost an age of slavery, and top down, somebody's God and somebody's a flunky, masters and servants. What's that all about? So, and I connected that with climate change. I thought there's a lot of behavior in these companies which makes no sense. And if you ask the individuals who are decent people why they are pursuing growth, they wouldn't be able to answer, because it's not in their job description to worry about what happens. You know, oh yeah, trees are chopped down. Well, I know that, but it's not somebody's worrying about that. It's not my job description. So I didn't like that answer. And I didn't feel I had any purchase in the organisation, any leverage to make a change. And it was just, I thought this is too confusing. So I thought, well, there must be a better way of structuring things to serve people, because we're serving these artificial beings called corporations. When shouldn't they be serving us and life? So 18 years ago, I got out and I swore and I said, I'm never going to be a lawyer again, never going to work for a big company again, but I'm going to find a better structure. Went into the not-for-profit sector. That I found was no better, actually. I often found more integrity in big companies than in,
interesting.
Well-being charities.
Yeah.
Because they suffer from a lot of the same dysfunctions, and there's very much top-down. There's a board who makes all the decisions, and they're often volunteers who have no connection. So scale is a problem. Scale means that the decision makers get more and more abstracted from the impact of their decisions, and they lose a feel for it. They lack grounding. Scale.
What comes to my mind when you say that, and the immediate thing was, there's also no financial flow. There's not as much financial flow, and when there is financial flow, there are things that can be put in place for those employees that I don't know, maybe that's not true, but for me, there's a well-being element that can be facilitated when you kind of get to places where there isn't that. Then maybe then that isn't there. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Sorry, you mean in charities there isn't the same?
I mean in charities versus the corporations, because in the corporations, you're saying there's a level of integrity. It's not really about the people in either scenario. In the corporates, okay, the overall mission doesn't seem quite as aligned. However, there is money there and it's flowing through, and therefore people get looked after, and there's an opportunity for people to feel a part of something. I don't know. Does that ring true for you?
Partly, I think for me, the way I think about it, they both quite get distracted by money. If you go to any sort of size NGOs, they're both chasing, they both think, where's the money come from? Because there's more money and because there's more sense of ownership of money in big corporates, they're less tolerant of time wasting, of going around in circles, which happens an awful lot in these. The inefficiency in large NGOs is absolutely disgraceful, really. Absolutely unbelievable if you experience it. All these grannies' money's going in and just being wasted. It's quite extraordinary. With decent people doing the best thing, but but they're both going to extremes. The businesses are going to one extreme, and that's why I got really interested in. There's almost like, and I suppose for myself, I felt this polarity of I love nature. I grow my own vegetables. I slept last night in a hammock in a tree, outdoors, and I love being outdoors and live in a forest. But I'm a very good lawyer. My mind works that way, and I get well paid for being a lawyer. And how do those two fit together? And for years I struggled to bring those two together. And I see this very similar actually with big corporations and big charities, that they are opposite ends of polarities. This idea yin and yang, night and day, black and white, masculine and feminine. They're, this concept, and actually, what I'm noticing is that there's some pressure or tendency for businesses to try to think a bit more like charities, and charities to start being a bit more business-like. But they're both rubbish at it, and the whole system is optimized around you focus on money, you focus on giving it away. And so they really struggle to, there may be enlightened individuals who say, look, we could be more business-like and more efficient. And enlightened individuals say, we can be more compassionate and caring and thinking about the bigger picture. But they're all got their hands tied behind their back and their feet tied together, because the system says, the law even says, shareholders first, the rest second, the Companies Act. And in the charity world, the funding, if the money runs out, they die. So they're constantly chasing the next, and planning and spending ages planning the next. They spend half their time preparing bids that are figments of imagination. So anyway, I got fascinated with that, and I came across social enterprises. And that is from someone who likes structures. I noticed that I really like that combination of the social and the enterprise. So you're not dependent on handouts, you generate your enterprise, but you're also caring about the social. But there's no real legal structure to do that. So I started to develop a practice of working with social enterprises and saying, well, don't just look for one company structure, let's have two. and have a charity or not-for-profit and a for-profit and tie them together. And if you think about the human brain, I understand it was a big evolutionary leap when we went from one brain to two chambers that communicate with each other. Now, if they don't communicate with each other, it's called schizophrenia.
Right.
And that's actually a lot of our behavior, our society is schizophrenic. We flip from we care about animals. You know, employees working for Tesco's will care about animals at home and have dogs and cats, but they go to work and they try and treat the chickens that they sell as cheaply as they possibly can in order to maximize profits. If that isn't schizophrenic, I don't know what is. So I think, what I've started to do is say, as long as they're communicating, they don't need to be schizophrenic. They can actually have emergent properties, which are neither business or charity. They're something new. And I suppose in parallel, that parallels my own journey from not wanting to be a lawyer and thinking, do I have to compromise being a lawyer and compromise my values of caring for the planet? Or can I do both? Can I actually say, and I think the concept of yin and yang is you don't need to say, I'm not very much yang, I'm not very much yin. You say, look, I'm both. At its best, yin and yang, it's complements, and there's an underlying unity. You transcend the both. So I think that's why it's possible for somebody to like some Labour policies and some Conservative policies and say, but I don't like the system, which means that they're forced to fight with each other. And I don't like the behaviours I'm seeing. But, another polarities, by the way, is I and we. So, which actually sometimes manifests itself in Conservatives are looking at I, it's always about I. It doesn't have to be selfish unless it's taken to extremes. And Labour left-leaning tends to be more about we. And actually, an organisation is both I and we, both at the same time. And so, actually, what you need to do is not say, well, I is better than we, or vice versa. You say, well, what if we bring those together, those perspectives, and allow them both to live together?
It's more of a holistic way of seeing things, because you're looking at everything together as a whole. Right?
Exactly. And some people are very good. It's almost impossible, I think. Maybe it's impossible to see the world at the same time as both. So you have to do this. And some people quite naturally think, well, I'm more of a business person. Some people quite naturally are more in the charity world. If they work on their own, they tend to go apart. But if you get them to work together and have a shared purpose, where purpose is so important to a business, then they can both get, okay, you don't see the world the same way as I do, but I really get that the world is a better place if we allow both of us to exist. And even though I'm much more comfortable and at home in my view of the world, I understand there's room for more than one perspective. And in fact, the world is a richer place when both can exist at the same time. And that we may conflict, but we don't fight. Conflict doesn't mean contest. Conflict just means tension, which can be resolved at a higher level. And I suppose what that means for me in my life journey is, about 6 months ago, I rebranded as the Barefoot Lawyer. And it took me years to feel bold enough about that. But I've got to a point where that for me transcends both. I can still be an excellent lawyer. I've got at least very experienced, competent, I've got lots of experience as a lawyer. But I can also put my heart on my sleeve and say, there's something I really care about. And so I'm a compassionate lawyer. I'm a lawyer who loves trees. I'm a facilitator lawyer. And I work from home. I'm deregulated, which makes it a lot easier to be free with these things. So I'm not on the role of solicitors. And that's freed me up. A lot of lawyers are constrained by insurance premiums and lots of stuff. But it liberates me to work with clients who mainly social enterprises who want to do this and understand that and aren't shy about embracing both sides of them. Because we've all got this masculine, feminine, up and down. We just have different inclinations, I guess.
And how did you feel bringing that in? I mean, you say that this is a new thing, this new label. Like before it was lawyer, now it's like the Barefoot Lawyer. How did you bring that? I assume you were that person before you started adding the label to it. And how did you then say, I'm going to now make that decision to step into being the Barefoot Lawyer?
I like the question, Joe. it's a sort of life work in a way for many people, and you know, of how we change as human beings, how we grow up. I think it's relatively new in social sciences, like in the last 30, 40, 50 years, to recognize that once we get to adulthood, we keep developing. We don't grow taller, we don't necessarily, but we don't, but there's different phases. You know, we have midlife crises, many of us, not everyone. And so for me, there's like a thing about growing up and that transcendence where you get to a stage where you don't have to choose between different parts of yourself, but you can embrace them all and allow just in the moment to feel with your head, heart, gut, and you feel what am I going to do in this situation, and trust that. And that's a real experience of letting go. And I suppose it helps to spend a lot of time in nature like I do, because nature models this, and to have a supportive family and low overhead, so I don't need to keep the pressures of having a huge mortgage or whatever. I haven't got those pressures. And it's sort of, but trusting in life mainly. I think I've seen enough of life and people, and I've got deep trust in life for all the, you know, awful things we can see happening in the world, but there's also never-ending beauty and amazing wonderfulness. So I think it's just about trust, and at a certain point, when you try and experiment a little bit. I changed my LinkedIn profile a year and a half ago to Barefoot Lawyer, and just waited to see what the reaction would be. And a few people loved it, and most people didn't comment. So I thought,
right.
So you do it step by step,
yeah.
And then finally you think. And I sounded out a couple of clients and said, well, think about this. And the client said, love it, it's you. Yeah. So I wasn't just and then I thought, right, I'm going to go for it now. And it did feel quite daring. But I suppose also in the last year or so, I've got more and more confident about my way of practicing. I'm much more likely to work with intuition and with feeling and with values. So there's this old concept of lawyers as healers, as three healing professions: lawyers, clergy, and medics. And lawyers heal society. And I really like that. And so that's inspired me too. So I've had a lot of inspiration from other, you know, a few lawyers who I've hung out with who are practicing in different ways. Divorce lawyers whose main aim is to keep the parents together at the end of the divorce, for example. And ecological lawyers and Polly Higgins, who was fighting for the law of ecocide. So lots of inspiration that helped too. And they'd be more bold than me. So in a way that makes it easier. Other people make the step. I
was just thinking about a question you might, or a statement you might make to your younger self, Patrick, like, would that be bolder? Or is there another message that you would give to yourself at 30, 25?
Yeah, gosh, it's hard, isn't it?
Or how's your journey been?
Part of me sees things have just unfolded in the best only way they could. So I'm not sure I feel confident enough to go and interfere and say, "Oi, you." I think what tends to happen, what happened to me was when I was in my 20s, early 20s, I was quite good at trusting myself. So I qualified as a lawyer and then took off for a year and a half and backpacked around the world. And people were saying, what about your career? So I've never been that attached to a particular path. And then maybe I lost that a bit. I became too professional and too wedded to, too groomed too institutionalized, actually. That's what seems to happen, is that you design yourself so perfectly for one environment that you're blind to everything else. And I think that would be the only thing I'd do, is maybe the boldness is a little bit more about why don't think small? Because even though I was doing an £800 million acquisition, as an individual, I was still thinking, well, I'm just little Patrick.
Yes.
And even though I was very good at that, that was part of me. I didn't allow other parts of me to be equally, wouldn't want them to show up at work. I mean, I cut my hair, for example, and maybe shave occasionally. And wear the suit, I'd fit into the uniform and suppress the wild part of me.
Yeah.
Whereas now I've got a completely different attitude, and I just trust that the right clients will come. For example, and I've only got one KPI, key performance indicator, and that's how many of my clients I hug at the end of meetings. And I'm up to about 70%. And I think if I get up to 100%, I'm probably going over the top, and I need to be more sensitive because some people don't like hugging really. But other than that, I just trust, and somehow there's a magic. The universe sends me the right clients, so I've got an amazingly diverse range of clients who love me for the most part, and I love them, and they know I love them, and it's mutual. So it's, and I suppose that it's just reminding myself also that law took me years to own the being a lawyer thing, and I've seen that actually it can be one of the most exciting. I love my job. I love my work. I think it can be, if you find your passion and you can connect that with clients who've got a passion. And you do meet every now and then, it's not just outside law firms, but in law firms, you meet lawyers who really believe in what they're doing, and the clients love them. And that's fantastic. I think if you can find your place, trust yourself and connect to that, then it doesn't get better. You just if you go into work and you think, yippee, if I'm still doing this job work in 15 years time, I mean, I'm in late 50s, that'll be fantastic,
Awesome. What great wisdom. I'm so excited by the way that you're working, and I think this will be definitely one of the things that I'm seeing so many new ways of bringing the kind of intention of the legal profession up, instead of this is the way we've always done things, which I say is a phrase that I feel remarkably frustrated with. Actually, here's a new and different way of doing things where we can overlay the way we've always done things if we choose to. But you were saying you kind of create constellations of people and you have conversations before the joint venture. Like those deeper conversations, I think, are going to be so much a part of the legal profession going forward. And there's that place for you. I love the new label that you've offered yourself and your boldness in stepping out there. And I'm sure there are other lawyers, well, certainly be business people who would be intrigued by the way that you work, but I hope there are other lawyers out there that are interested in hearing more and saying, oh, actually, maybe this gives me an opportunity, particularly in this environment and at these times. There are going to be people who are going to say, actually, I think I want to change. I think I want to do something else. I think I want to be bolder. I think I want to go and trust myself. I think I want to get out there and really explore that. And I think you've given a great kind of story. I wanted to ask you one final question that just came to my mind. And that is, do we choose the polarities as individuals?
I don't think we do. I think that somebody said, a young entrepreneur came to me and said, who I'd worked with, and we got on really well. And she said, well, I'm not, I like what I'm doing, but it doesn't quite, I'm feeling that I'm not being my whole self. And what else can I do? And sort of what's my purpose is sometimes people phrase it that way.
Mm.
I think that's very close, and some people use the language which I'm getting more comfortable with, is about the soul. There's our soul calls to us. What's our soul purpose? What's calling to us, in which sometimes you have to go into a sort of an underworld deep inside you to find that. And slowing down like we're doing at the moment can be really good for that. You don't have time when you're busy. And I said, and I was just saying, look, I didn't go hunting. I sort of went hunting for this, but it found me. I was just listening. I got better at listening to it and being willing to go with what it said rather than suppressing it because I had to pay the mortgage or whatever. And then I read not very long afterwards somewhere, just that actually, you won't find it, it will find you. And so what your soul's calling you to do, you just sometimes just need to listen a bit better. And nearly always, always I think, my theory at least of this is, there's a little voice inside you which is telling you, calling to you, and it's very patient. It may take you 30 years. I mean, it took me ages to really come out, if you like, as the barefoot lawyer, which I've always been, but I never saw myself as that, and so I didn't allow it. I suppressed part of myself. I do think people are naturally more, not everyone holds these quite such, I think I am somebody who holds these polarities and is able to see from both sides, but just whatever you are, whoever you want to be, just allow that to emerge. Just like, I think Michelangelo, or one of these famous sculptures, he said, all I do is I remove the excess clay, and then the statue was always there. I just allow it to be removed. And I think that's what, we can make our own lives a work of art. We don't need to be painters or sculptors or authors. We just have to drop off the stuff that's not necessary. But it can be a lifetime's work and more, but it's worth it.
It's a worthwhile pursuit. Well, thank you. We're going to leave it there, Patrick. I really love your way of doing law differently and thinking differently and kind of working with businesses to make things different. I mean, that's the word that keeps coming up, different. How can we get in contact with you? If lawyers or businesses want to get in touch with you, how can they find you?
I mean, if they look at Barefoot Lawyer UK or Patrick Andrews Barefoot Lawyer UK in Google, they'll pretty much find me. Awesome. So I'm on LinkedIn and all the usual places. So and I have a Medium blog too, which I write on occasionally. So but basically barefootlawyer.uk and you'll find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, everybody that's watched. I hope that you've enjoyed today. You may subscribe just down here below if you want to hear more wisdom from the legal and the business profession. I'm wishing you a lovely, what will be a bank holiday now, weekend. Thank you for joining us. Bye.